Mahashweta Devi's story and Subaltern broke up after that. Basically because can we write a story as an evidence or material? Something written in Tribal History of 1936, written in 1983, can it be considered as a material for discussion or another paper? You all know that Subaltern withered away. Subaltern today is not the same. Same question comes to my mind, whether the modernity and the post-modernity, can it continue to discuss issues with which you have no empathy and sympathy? You have not faced yourself. You are writing with fictional character like Salman Rushdie's Midnight Children. When I read Salman Rushdie, I was in my first year of my college. And I did not empathize with it. One thing is that for a first year student, the language was very difficult. Another thing was that I did not empathize with the story. Also because I have not faced the trauma. People cried. I know that my friends who cried all night reading Salman Rushdie, but I did not. Question is that whether these particular writings being written today, and I would take Ghadar 1 and Ghadar 2, both of them made a lot of money. I have a problem. I just put to your submission. All my work, I have been studying only popular films. I have never studied people who have made art film, art genre. Basically because I feel that many of these films, with due respect to them, beautiful films, but they never saw the day of the light. And that is why probably they didn't have a social impact. I was just talking in the mess half an hour, 1 hour before with my friend Ayuji and Negiji. We were talking about it, that what kind of impact a particular kind of book would make, a film would make after so many years. It may not. When you see a Ghadar 1 and Ghadar 2, you see as a Sunny Deol film. We were talking about Ritvik Ghatak. In this very institute, when I was a guest fellow here, we organized a film club. All my fellows, they requested that you show us a Ghatak or trilogy. I went to Delhi by bus. I got the 3, because I stay in Chindran Park, which is a Bengali colony, so we used to get all the films. I got 3 Ghataks. D'Souza Saab was the director at that time. We sat for almost 1 hour waiting for everyone to turn up. No one turned up. So this is Ghatak for you. You want to chant Ghatak, you want to write about him, you don't want to see him. So what the problem is that we are talking about the film. I have only written about Hum Aapke Kaun, Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge. I would write about Jab Tak Hai Jaan. I have written basically because they were the film which made millions. They were the film which is running the Bollywood. We like it or not like it, it is Ghadar which made 965 crore. This is Ghadar 2. When you make 965 crore, you impact the people. People are talking about Ghadar, and if they know the meaning of Ghadar 1 and 2, if they know what is the problem of Pakistan, it is basically because of some of the films like Veer Zara. One of my articles in this book is on Hina and Veer Zara. How do you know a country which is so disconnected with you now? It's through films. The longevity of the cultural trauma is often a matter of civilizational embarrassment, which often delays the reaction of involved parties for a very long time. The collective and historical memories often figure in written word but avoid filmic representation. We can take the examples of the World War and Vietnam War and closer home, India-Pakistan War of 1971. In fact, what I told, when I mentioned earlier, in fact, in India, the government had barred the use of Pakistan in film, and generally filmmaker had to use one enemy country as alternative expression, while in stories and novels, Pakistan figured freely. We may safely argue that while the readership of novels and stories were comprising of educated people, a very small community, they were not expected to make violent reactions. They were not. They were educated people. Films were very different. Another thing was that the stories and novels were read by one individual at a time and merited no collective response or reaction. The individual consumption of a fictional historical moment deprives the story of the culpable potential of violent reaction. The reader feels the anger, but is too lonely to stir a mass reaction. In it is different in films, where a large crowd consumes the narrative and chances of reaction are of larger scale and volatile proportions. Let's example of Tamas, the novel Bhisham Sani, which was written in 1973, and the Tamas, the film, which was made by Govind Nilani in 1988, Pinjar, 1950 story. The film was made in 2003. But both the novels were of highest literary value, wherein consumed by a very, very small people. First of all, Hindi readership is limited. They generally, even today, my publisher friend, they tell me that they don't buy books. They don't buy expensive books. So if the book is expensive, 600, 500, 800, 900 rupees, but probably the market will be very, very low. Number of people who could afford to buy the books and appreciate them were very small. They were written with high literary readers in mind who could read and understand and dissect them. But the films were made with a larger, much bigger budget on them, reached millions of people and even generated mass of wider hysterical reactions. So in more than one ways, it had more impact than the novels in the social level. I'm not saying that novel did not have an impact. It didn't have a collective impact. I may conclude. My time is almost up. I'll conclude in 2 minutes. As many as we can try. We have as many conclusions. Each one of us can draw a conclusion of our own. I'm sure in the next 2 days, today and tomorrow, all the people will be drawing their own conclusion, and brilliant ones at that. Depends upon which side of the divide you are. Which genre you're talking about, writing or filming. More often than not, literature is a product of individual creativity and labor. That's a very important point. Films are not. Films are a teamwork, involves crore. My student quite often asks me that why this film was very bad. That's something like Happy New Year, Farah Khan made for 70 crore. You know, one is not fool to invest 70 crore making a bad film. You make a very good film. It turns out to be bad, that is different. There's a team of people who understand. When you watch a film and you realize that why this film is so successful. As a film critique, I'll give you one example of long many years. Maine Pyar Kiya was released. And I reviewed for Times of India that particular film. And I literally tore that apart. I said, this is what? This is nothing. This looks like a marriage video. I mean, it will fade. The dress sense is bad. The songs are bad. I didn't like anything. Turned out to be a biggest grosser. You know, we the critics who sit in our drawing rooms, watch a film, have the luxury of watching, write something which is not by the people. People love that film. This is one of the biggest blockbusters that we have. Same intention, same feeling I had with Kuch Kuch Hota Hai. One of my books which is coming is on Karan Johar's films, on LGBTQ community and the Karan Johar film. I didn't understand why the film is successful. So the point that I'm making is that somebody in investing 100 crore is not a fool. Writing a book in the individual luxury, films are not a luxury. 200 people depend upon your flopping or directly flopping or success of a film. Books and stories have a very limited circulation. Trying to conclude, films have a larger audience. In relation to partition, literature has been closer to the truth. There is absolutely no doubt about it. You really can't compare a Khushwant Singh or a Bapsi Sidhwa or maybe Manto or maybe even Salman Rushdie with anything which is come later, or Amrita Pritam, of course. But barring a few films have been rather oversimplification. This often happens as the story or the narrative has to be acceptable to the masses. Make us employ the service of the known star. That also forces them to employ the services of all these partition films have big stars like Sanjay Dutt and others. The films made on partition after decades of the Great Divide try to relive a trauma which they have not experienced, trauma to the horrors of partition, transforming itself again and again in the shape of multi-headed dragon called terrorism. Now, you take up very longitudinal perception. What Laduri, who died just a few days ago, he was talking about longer during perception is that trying to take a telescopic view of that partition has come to terrorism. That kind of continuum which we have, that we have to understand. The younger generation, the younger nation has accepted terrorism as a continuation of partition, as inevitability of the partition. The success of the two brothers shows it well. Thank you very much, and thank you, Lady Ji, thank you Manish, and thank you Secretary Sahab for inviting me, and thank you all friends. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Honorable Speaker has many things to share with us, but due to constraint of the time, we have had to curtail his speech. Thank you very much, sir. Our next speaker is Professor Harpal Singh, who is a National Fellow here. May I request Professor Harpal Singh ji to kindly deliver his address.
Professor Mishra, Professor Nirmal Kumar, Professor T. Jandani, and Mehir Chand Degi ji, who occupy the place among us on the dais, and Professor Nagareshwar Rao, the Director of the Institute, who has joined us online, and the learning audience, and our academic resource officer, Shri Prem Chand, who has a lot to do with organizing this seminar. When one talks of partition, the Punjab is never away from different kinds of memories of partition. In our homes, the reference to partition occurs like a calendar. I remember in my childhood when my mother and grandfather used to talk about someone. In partition, partition was known in our local language as halle. So they would say like this, कि हल्लियां तू 7 साल दी सी. You were 7 when when it is halla, it is mindless violence, taking or involving communities. And partition is an unending pain, especially on the Indian side. It continues to be a festering wound. Our reasons of its remaining a festering wound are different from the partitioned country on other side of the border. India has been a cradle of civilization, and that civilization encompasses the entire region which comprises Pakistan, the present India, and extending into even Afghanistan. You must have heard about Bamiya, Buddha. Buddhism is the birthplace of India. extending up to Sri Lanka and to Afghanistan, they all belong to us. When they are hurt, we are blamed. Among the two oldest universities, seats of religion, the great Taxila lies in ruins at a place where not many of us can think of visiting. And the temple of Kalasraj is in the region where Harisingarua fell fighting when the Afghans stopped at that place after 800 years. They tried to breach the passage in his samadh, and surprisingly, no Sikh bothered to erect a samadh in his memory. It was years later that a samadh of Harisingarua was erected, one Kajumal, a Khatri. Therefore, partition for India is a division of soul. One cannot imagine a soul split